Hey guys, as promised to some of my friends and family, here's a video of me trying to make sourdough bread. Hey guys, as promised to some of my friends and family, here's a video of me trying to make sourdough bread. So like many of you, during the last little bit, I've been stuck indoors, and to stop myself from losing my mind, I've picked up some new hobbies, and obviously one of those new hobbies is baking sourdough bread. So I'm going to record the whole process, show you how it's done, show you that anyone can make sourdough bread as long as they have the right ingredients and just a little bit of patience. And yeah, so I've made around 8 to 10 loaves so far, so I'm quite a beginner at this. There's obviously some videos of people that have made thousands of loaves. You can check out one of their videos to see maybe the differences. But this is basically a tutorial for a beginner how to make sourdough bread. So one of the things that I had to purchase when I was starting this was a food scale. Pretty essential to just get the proportions right. Another thing that's not essential would be a proving basket or Banneton. You can use this and then you can get the nice little lines on your bread, or you can put it in a bowl. Either way will work. Another thing that you need is a sourdough starter, so you can actually make this yourself. It does take 5 days to make. This one I actually purchased on Amazon. It's a 40-year-old starter, so the good thing about the starter is once you make it, it lasts literally forever, as long as you just have to feed it every couple days, or feed it every single day depending on how you store it. And then another thing that you need obviously would be bread flour. Flour is very hard to come by right now at the grocery stores, but if you go every day, maybe they'll have some restocked for you. So yeah, I'll just change the camera here down. So I have all the ingredients here pretty much in the bowls. So it's just 400 grams of flour, 5 grams of water, 230 grams of warm or lukewarm water. It just doesn't, you just don't want it to be too hot. And then as well, we're going to have 160 grams of mature starters. So what you want to do first is mix the water into the flour. And to do this, you can use your hands, but I like to just do it first with a spoon, get all the water incorporated in there. If you do it straight with your hands, what I found is that the flour will just really stick to your fingers and it'll be a pain to get off. But yeah, you just want to mix all that in there, and then you're gonna get some flour sticking to your hands. And then I'm gonna put this onto the scale here, so you can't actually see the number. Maybe you can see the number, I'm not sure. But anyways, I want 160 grams of starters, so... And the thing about the starter as well is you never want to use all of your starter, or else you're gonna have to start making your starter from scratch again, and that'll take 5 days. So you always want to just keep a little bit in the bottom. And yeah, like I said, this one's actually 40 years old, so it's older than I am, and it's got some microbes in there from the, what would that be, the 80s? Maybe the 70s? I'm not sure. Anyways, mix that all in there. But once you kind of get to this texture, obviously it varies depending on what you want to do. Then you can just pretty much ditch the spoon and just get your fingers dirty. You can use like if you have like a kitchen mixer or something. Fortunately, I'm not privileged enough to have one of those, but mixing it by hand is perfectly fine. And the good thing as well is it's actually quite a workout. So you have to mix this for around 7 minutes, basically, until the texture completely changes. And yeah, if you want to stay in shape during this whole quarantine situation, I think baking bread would be a good place to start. Okay, and then as well, you can mix the whole thing in a bowl, but I find it's just easier once you got a kind of solid mass, just to flip it onto an unfloured workbench, and then just do the rest of the mixing from there. It's just easier and then funner. You can like punch it, get it all mixed up in there. So I've been mixing this for quite a while, so I've been mixing this for around 7 to 8 minutes, I'm not really sure. But basically what you want is the texture to be completely different than when you started, definitely. And you want what's called the window pane effect, so you can stretch the bread and it doesn't tear, it just kind of turns like translucent. Obviously this is tearing a bit, it's gonna tear eventually. But that's kind of the texture that you're looking for, just to show that the gluten is is forming. I really don't know. But you can now, what I'm gonna do is actually add some walnuts to this. Obviously you don't need to add walnuts, but this will just give it some texture. So I forget how much walnuts, I think it was like 25 grams of walnuts. So I'm just gonna mix that into the batch here. And with kneading the dough, I'm not sure what the correct technique, but what I find works well is just using the heel of your hand and just pushing the dough until it kind of comes free, and then just like moving it around and trying to get it on all different sides. Oh yeah, and one thing that I forgot to mention that's definitely essential as well is you need a bread scraper. So I just have a plastic one here. It actually came with my Banneton when I ordered it. You can get like a metal one. This is probably like $1, but it's definitely an essential tool. You need it in order to handle the bread properly, I would say. All right, so I think the walnuts are pretty well mixed in there. What you want to do is just make it into a nice little ball and then give it a good slap. Pick it up, put it into the same bowl that you were mixing it in before, and you're gonna let it sit for 3 hours to prove. Make sure that you cover it up or else it'll get dry and it'll ruin the bread. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll be back in 3 hours and show you what to do from there. My bread has now finished its, I think it's called bulk fermentation. Not entirely sure on that, but anyways, it's done proving in this. So now we're gonna transfer it over into our proving baskets and also do some folds to help develop the gluten, I believe. So there are some bubbles, obviously. There's a lot more, it looks like a lot more dough is in here. That's how you can tell it's ready to go. And then you wanna scrape this out onto an unfloured work surface. Again, you don't want to add any more flour to it. You want to have kind of a wet, sticky dough. It might be a little bit hard to handle, but what I found is you just have to be confident with your how you're touching it, or else it'll stick to your fingers. See, it's already sticking to my fingers there. But if you believe that the bread won't stick to your fingers, it won't stick to your fingers, but we'll see. We'll see about that. So what you want to do is you want to do a couple folds. So you start at the top and you fold it over to the back.
And then one side, fold it over again. And then go to the other side, fold it over. Oh, I kind of ripped there. That's not supposed to happen. And then do the bottom, fold it over like so.
And then this is gonna be actually the bottom of the dough. Get underneath it, flip it up, oh God, and then plop it back down. And ideally it's supposed to look a little bit better than that, but it's okay. So you wanna kind of form it into like a little ball here. And so what I'm doing is just sliding it underneath, turning it with my other hand. And you can see there's some lumps in it. That's just the walnuts that I put in there. If you're doing it without walnuts, it should be nice and smooth, nice and tight. Not quite there yet, I don't think. Spin it around and you want to create some tension on the top of your bread so it holds itself together. So when you kind of stop doing it, it doesn't just go into like a pancake shape. Is you want to just let it rest for around 10 minutes, but you want to make sure you cover it. So I'm just using the bowl that I was using previously. Gonna let that cover for 10 minutes, and then I will be back. Now it's time to uncover the bread and let it sit for another 10 minutes. This is a very essential part of it because the bread's gonna get a nice little skin on it, and that is essential because the first time I kind of skipped this step and I put the bread like this straight into the proving basket, even though I lined the proving basket with flour, and then the bread stuck to the proving basket when I went to flip it out at the end, and it was kind of a disaster, but the bread still actually turned out, it was edible anyways. It didn't look quite as pretty as hopefully this one will look, but anyways, 10 minutes like this and then we'll flip it into there. So it's been around 10 minutes. Now the bread has a little bit of a skin on it, so now when I touch it, my finger doesn't stick to it at all. It's just like a thin skin. You don't want to leave it for too long or else you get too thick of a skin. And you can see that there's actually some air bubbles that are forming in there. So that's actually not a nut. That's an air bubble. That's a nut. That's a nut. That's an air bubble. Oh, that's a big air bubble. Anyways, so what you want to do now is take a little bit of flour and just sprinkle it on top to help also make sure that it doesn't stick to the proving basket. And then I've also sprinkled a little bit of flour in here. And then, yeah, what you want to do is take your handy dandy scraper and hopefully do this in one nice movement. So this is going to be the top of the bread, which is going to go face down into the Banneton. So let's see if I can just get underneath everything here and then do it in nice one quick motion here. Okay, nice. And you just lay it down there like a little baby in a crib. And yeah, so now you can sprinkle a little bit more flour onto the bottom. Spread that around a little bit. You put either like a tea towel on top and just cover it up. And you can, so I'm just gonna let this sit here for another 3 hours and then I'm gonna put it straight into the oven. 3 hours here and then I'll be back. So it's been around 2 to 3 hours and our bread has proved. To tell that it's proved, if you push down on it, it should bounce back slowly, which it's doing, so perfect. So what you want to do is get yourself a baking tray. Ideally, you would have a Dutch oven to cook this in, but unfortunately I don't. So I just have a baking tray. I have my oven set on as high as it'll go. And then I have a tray at the bottom of the oven with water in it to help make steam in the oven, so it'll give it a nice crust. To get your bread out, you just basically flip it over and hope that it doesn't stick, which it kind of is. It's coming free. Okay, there we go. So there's our lovely little bread. And then what I like to do is just some simple scoring. So I'll just do one straight across the side, I guess across the top.
And then another one perpendicular.
And then, yeah, that's pretty much all you got to do. Then stick it in the oven. And we have 30 minutes to wait. So I've just taken the bread out of the oven where it was baking at 240 degrees Celsius for around 35 minutes. And the hardest part about baking sourdough bread is after you take the bread out of the oven, you have to wait, I'd say minimum an hour for it to cool down before you cut into it. And yeah, I'll see you in an hour. So it's been just over 45 minutes. I know I said minimum an hour, probably 2 hours would be best, but I'm so damn hungry and I just wanna cut into this thing and get going. So obviously, because I did it on a baking sheet, the crust on the bottom isn't as hard as you'd get if you did it in a Dutch oven. That's why people prefer a Dutch oven, but everything else is really nice. It's nice and crispy, so yeah, we'll just go ahead and cut into it. So a moment of truth. There we go. And yeah, so you can see some of the walnut chunks in there. You got some air bubbles, and it smells fantastic. And there we go. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's actually got some color here and here. I believe that's from the walnuts. It's kind of a darkish brown color, so hopefully from the walnuts. Hopefully it's not like it can't be moldy bread. That doesn't make any sense. But anyways, I'm gonna dig into this, and yeah, that's pretty much that's how you that's how you make sourdough bread. How should I end it? Like that?
Say now I'm going get some cheese, and cheese platter is ready.
The cheese and the wine platter is ready. I'm gonna go dig in, and that is how you make sourdough bread from scratch.